This episode of The Entrepreneurs on Monocle 24 is brought to you in association with Dubai Tourism.
You're listening to Eureka on Monocle 24 with me, Daniel Beach, host of The Entrepreneurs. Rupert McKelvey is the founder of Out of the Valley, a cabin design and manufacturing company based in Devon in England's southwest. Rupert trained as a boat builder and worked in the furniture industry before starting the company back in 2015. The idea came out of necessity, as Rupert built his first cabin as a place to live. Today, his team creates bespoke, made-to-order cabins to be used as studios, garden offices, saunas, or wilderness retreats. Out of the Valley has seen a steady growth in recent years with a huge interest in sustainable, low-impact dwellings. Here's Rupert now with the story of Out of the Valley.
Out of the Valley are cabin and furniture makers based down in Devon in the UK, and we specialise in making things out of wood and other natural materials. Our projects vary in scale from off-grid dwellings to backyard home studios and offices, saunas and tree houses. And we also work at the scale of furniture and interiors, often populating our builds with pieces that we make in-house. So I was working up in London as a furniture and product designer, and later more as a cabinet maker and specialist fabricator. And I'd amassed a nice amount of clients up in London. Although I was working for another company, I was using the weekends and evenings to develop my own practice. And I decided to start converting an old barn on my mum's farm in Devon and turn it into a workshop with the idea of moving back down to this part of the world. And I was doing that through the summers and at the weekends. And when it was finally ready, I made the move down, and I found myself living pretty much in the workshop 24 hours a day. I built a mezzanine deck within it so I could sleep in there as well. And I put so much love into it that it was almost as nice as a house. And I felt when I was building it and converting it, I felt that I'd probably be spending more time in it than a house. So I paid real attention to its warmth and nice lighting. It's got a big wood-burning stove in there to stay warm. But it became clear that that wasn't very sustainable. Naturally, it was quite dusty, and as the business started to grow, I needed somewhere to live. And I've been following this tiny house movement for quite a long time. Obviously, a fan of cabins, and that movement, which was, cabin porn was still in its infancy. It was still just a Tumblr blog. And it wasn't at the scale it's at now with published books. But I was sourcing inspiration from all over, really, about cabin culture and looking at shelters from around the world, from the very primitive to kind of quite advanced wooden buildings, and just taking inspiration from all of that. And with those kind of ideas, and with a big pile of wood that was left in one of our barns, and a really nice little location down in the corner of one of the fields next to the workshop, it seemed like a great opportunity to build myself a tiny home, a wooden cabin that would act as a template really of how I'd like to live. It was a great project because I was my own client. So I'd call it kind of slow design, slow architecture and slow making. I wasn't doing it within the working week because I was working on other projects. So it's something I'd do in the evenings, work on it at the weekends. So it became a real passion project. And once it was completed, I moved in, lit the fire, had a hot shower, went for a swim in the river, and never felt happier. It was one of the best moments. Building a shelter from the ground up. And obviously I'd been working at the scale of furniture for quite a long time, so obviously it had all of our furniture inside it. But suddenly to have made something that you inhabit and that you can live in and you can share with friends and family, it carries a certain quality to it. And from that moment, I knew it was something I wanted to share with other people. Yeah, we work across, the full spectrum from private landowners and farmers looking to diversify their land and find another revenue stream. And that's becoming increasingly popular and important as more and more farmers are looking to move away from such intensive agricultural processes, and obviously there's a lot of encouragement at the moment to rewild land. And then we work at the scale of backyard cabins and offices, hotels that are kind of moving into offering their guests a different way of experiencing their environment, and working within the wellness space quite a lot as well. Yeah, so we use a lot of plant-based materials, and wood is obviously one of the most fantastic of the bunch. When it's well managed in well-managed forests, it replenishes itself very quickly. It creates obviously incredible habitat during that process. Once a tree has got to the end of its growing cycle and life, it's cut and felled and then planked and turned into building materials, from structure to cladding to flooring. Within its growing cycle, it's been sucking up lots of carbon from the atmosphere that's then embedded in all of its cells. So by using it responsibly and turning it into well-made and well-built products, from furniture to cabins, you're essentially locking all of that carbon into the cabin itself. So it's a great way of extracting carbon from the atmosphere. And trees, obviously, one of the best plants at that. Beyond that, it's an incredible material in terms of its qualities, and obviously there's a vast range of different species out there, but we find ourselves working with things that grow within proximity to our workshop and our different sites that we operate at. And that means working with a lot of oak, a lot of ash, lots of larch and cedar and Douglas fir. And at the moment, we're trying to source the majority of our wood within a 50-mile radius of the workshop, sometimes going a bit further afield. But in Devon, there's a lot of well-managed forest, so we bring in a lot of timber from them to use within our construction process. At the moment, we're also specifying and working with a lot of plant-based installations, and for much the same reason as using timber, they are, again, great sources of carbon store, natural, recyclable, completely free of any toxic materials or processes. So we're using a lot of jute at the moment. Hemp is an incredible plant that's slowly coming back into awareness for its very strong fibre, very fast growing, grows well in the UK and lots of places across the world. So we're using that quite a lot as well at the moment. Yeah, so the workshop is down in Devon, and it started as a timber frame workshop, and we've slowly been expanding out into different barns at the farm. And we've got a dedicated team now with people in the office and carpenters out in the workshops producing the work. But the thing with cabins is you can never have enough space. So when you're working at the scale of interiors, it's all very manageable. But because we're focusing quite heavily on prefabricated cabins now, with the idea of at large fully prefabricating the modules here and then taking them to site almost ready to plug and play, it means that we can build very efficiently in controlled conditions in a workshop environment that's well lit. We don't have to contend with challenging weather conditions on site. So that's become a much stronger focus of the company over the last year, is expanding our pre-production range of products and cabins. I studied boat building when I was fairly young. I started that when I was 20, and my father actually encouraged me to go off and learn a really good practical skill before going to university. So I did a classical boat building course over a year and learnt a lot of really interesting techniques about timber construction. And I think now looking back that it was a bit of a turning point. I knew from that point on that whatever I studied, I also wanted to really be quite integrated in the making process. And in a way, a boat is probably very similar to a cabin, but just upside down. But they're essentially performing the same task of keeping the weather out and keeping the sailors or the inhabitants warm and dry and safe. And then went off to study design, which gave me a good understanding of design. And yeah, I've just been a very hands-on designer maker ever since. And A lot of it is self-taught with anything, you learn as you go. But now we're at the stage where obviously we've got, a very solid team around us of architects and designers and makers who also I couldn't do any of this without. And they're crucial to the kind of the operating and the success of the business. Up until fairly recently, we were very bespoke, and we would be designing and building every project as a site-specific one-off build. And we continue to do that. But while that's going on, we've also been developing our Nomad cabin range, which is more pre-designed. And although the client can fully customise it to their needs, whether it be an off-grid home or a home office, it provides a template that they can work with and we can work with them with to generate a layout and a scheme much more efficiently and quickly, so we can turn them around much faster. So our bespoke side of the business is still going on, and those are the much bigger projects that can sometimes take a year or two to go through the process of planning, building regulations, and then into construction. And while that's all happening, we're working on a lot of Nomad cabins that are going into home offices and saunas and such like. Obviously, I love making cabins for all of our wonderful clients, but I also see the value in people that perhaps can't have access to cabins or can't afford one or don't have the land or the space to be able to experience them. Because, it wasn't so long ago that we were all inhabiting fairly basic shelters, in the UK, roundhouses in the Bronze Age, and further afield, the yurts of Mongolia and, the teepees of Northern America. And in Africa, there's still a lot of people inhabiting very basic structures. And in that, of course, life can be and is more challenging, but you are just so much more attuned to what's happening around you in the natural world. And we've become very removed from all of that. And it's largely because of the built environment. It's just become this homogeneous mass of concrete, steel and glass, which almost seals us off from the very environment we so need to connect to. And that's why these kind of simple shelters and cabins and bothies are a great way of reconnecting with that. And the more people that can have access to that experience, the better. So that's something that, I'm very passionate about, and something that we're looking to be able to offer to more people. We've been very fortunate to have worked on some really interesting projects over the years in some very beautiful locations, from the beaches of Cornwall to the Outer Hebrides of Scotland and lots in between. But I still find that taking our work to people's back gardens and city homes is very rewarding, because you're creating that experience but within the context of the urban environment, which I think is really needed. But a project that really stands out is a sauna that we made down in Cornwall a few years ago on the banks of a decommissioned granite quarry. And we actually took stones from the quarry and used these as building blocks to put the structure on. And we were fortunate to have used a very lovely mix of raw materials within the building itself, from a green oak timber frame structure to copper fish scale tiles that will turn verdi green over time, to alder panelling and chestnut panelling internally. It's one of those projects that will only get better and better with age.
Rupert McKelvey, founder of Out of the Valley. You can learn more about the company at outofthevalley.co.uk. My thanks to Rupert and to Christy Evans, who mixed and edited this show. I'm Daniel Bache. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.